the myth of 1%. Don't be misled by stories of Lucy and things like that. Okay, I shouldn't even brought this slide. I'm going to blank the slide up next time I give this talk, because this just brings this whole hornet's nest of 8 men and what they are. There's some creationists that say that Lucy and the Australopithecines were the ancient chimpanzees, and chimpanzees today have devolved. There's a lot of evidence saying that chimpanzees are under a tremendous amount of genetic stress because of the number of mutations that they carry. And don't be misled by stories about Neanderthal man. That is a forensic reconstruction of a Neanderthal child's skull found in Gibraltar. Does that look like a caveman boy to you? He's got green eyes. Because we can now run some genetics on Neanderthals, and we know that some of them had green eyes. Freckles. Could have freckles. We've sequenced what's called the FOXP2 gene. The FOXP2 gene gives us the ability to speak. They had the exact same gene. As far as I can tell, just from gleaning stuff over the years, it looks like Neanderthals, well, let's see. First of all, their brains were larger than modern man on average. Their muscles were larger than modern man on average. This part of their brain stuck out, the occipital bun. This is the part that gives you the coordination and motor control. So they're bigger brains, more coordinated than we are today. Who's superior to whom? It looks like they painted in caves, made musical instruments, had the controlled use of fire, buried their dead with grave implements and red pigment with their heads facing east towards the sunrise. Doesn't sound very primitive to me. Okay, I just threw this in there. A lot of what we're learning about genetics is coming out in the Journal of Creation. It took a lot of work. I got 2 articles published in Journal of Creation on genetics. And other people are publishing stuff on genetics. The geneticists that I know, we feel like kids in a candy shop. But each one of us only has a nickel. And that nickel, you buy one thing, and you can't buy anything else. And it's hard to decide. I had a paper published actually in the Evolutionary Journal, some work that ICR sponsored on mitochondrial Eve. That was great. That was a year's worth of work. It was great. I spent the next year working on something I thought I found the Holy Grail, a code within a code in the genome. Ooh, something that transcends the level of the protein coding genes. And after a while working on it for 6 or 9 months, I realized that the original authors who did the first pilot study made an incorrect assumption about randomness in the genome. The genome's not random. And so I spent 3 more months saying, and I undid what I did, and I was going to publish this great paper saying, these guys were wrong. And I sent it out, and it came back from the reviewers saying, everybody already knew that. Didn't you see that paper? Now, it was a paper published about a month before I submitted mine. It came out, so these guys are a year ahead of me. And so by the time I did that, and I wasted a year of my life. I learned a lot about writing Perl scripts, but I wasted a year of my life. I only had 1 nickel. So, boy, here we go. Sorry. Take a drink here, take a little pause. Everybody, relax your brain for a second. I got to relax my brain. Okay. Let's see what the Bible has to say about the Tower of Babel, because this is where the out of Africa event comes from. Genesis 11:1. Now the whole earth had one language and one speech, one culture. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city whose tower is and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." Cohesiveness? God didn't like this. So he said, "Come, let us go down and confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. God had commanded them to spread out. They defied God, came together. Well, if people are very closely related, one language, one culture, would they tend to marry one another or break up into factions? Would you expect in that first generation after the flood the daughters of Ham to marry the sons of Shem? Of course. There's only 16 girls and 16 boys, or 16 sons are named. We assume about 16 girls, only about 30 children in that second generation. Of course they're going to intermarry. Oh. What God did, essentially, He took the human population of Babel and he said this. But think of how he divided them. The Tower of Babel gives us flood legends from all over the world, not fire legends. In fact, I think that a story of the earth being burned to a crisp and then things regrowing afterwards is a lot more likely than flood stories from all over the world. We've got genealogies. There's a book on the downstairs tables called After the Flood. How many people have read After the Flood? One of my favorites. There you go right there. I've downloaded all the source material that he quotes. The Chronicles of the Kings of Britain and things like that. Oh, fascinating, neat stuff. But in that book, the author traces the genealogies of all the royal houses of a lot of the royal houses of Northern Europe. They go back to Japheth, the son of Noah. These are pagan peoples. They didn't know what the Bible was. There's a tribe in China that does the same thing. Pagan. Look at this unbelievable correlation of historical events. If you just look at the Chinese dynasties and when China was founded, just take it at face value, and you look at the Bible at face value, the first Chinese dynasty was founded 72 years after the Tower of Babel. Whew. And of course, you had these unbelievable cultural connections early on all around the world. Weird ways. So this trapezoid in the middle is the Tower of Babel. Let me ask you a question. When God separated people at the Tower of Babel, is that where races come from? Because you see, if there's only 8 people and God separates them, can you see that there's a pretty good chance that like all the green-faced people will end up in one circle and all the red-faced people end up in another circle? This is called the founder effect. The descendants of those green children, of those green people, will be green because the descendants can't not help but to only have the genes that are in the founder population. Fair enough? Oh, but wait a minute. It's not that simple. What if there are more people at Babel and God separates them? Can you find differences amongst those groups? You're going to have to start applying statistics. Well, how many people were at Babel? How do we know when Babel was? Well, Genesis 9 and 10, the table of nations, there are 16 sons named Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So if we just use that as a general approximation for growth rate, in the first generation are 6 people. In the second generation, about 30. 32, but about 30. Third generation at that rate, about 150.